साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोध समये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्री गुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्री दक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः माया कल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतम् मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै Verse 15 नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न चैव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः Verse 16 ज्ञानेन तु तदज्ञानं येषां नाशितमात्मनः तेषामादित्यवच् ज्ञानं प्रकाशयति तत्परम्. So from the 13th verse onwards, Lord Krishna has been discussing this Jnana Yoga, which is the central theme of this chapter, from verse 13 to 21. And this Jnana Yoga alone leads to inner renunciation or inner detachment. So Jnana Yoga means it's a pursuit of knowledge, basically, by which one gains a moksha. And this Jnana Yoga, definitely alone leads to this inner renunciation, inner detachment, which alone is a real renunciation, according to Bhagavan. External renunciation can be practiced only to some extent. Nobody can become totally, let's say, nobody can totally renounce externally everything. If a person, suppose, takes a formal sannyasa, he renounces. So if a person gives up a family relationship, even if he gives up a money or job, everything, and he will be staying in some ashram or kutia, so that kutia he cannot renounce. And and he wants a food, clothing, etc., which he cannot renounce. If he gives up food and clothing and everything, and he even renounces even a small residence, etc., whatever it may be, so then he cannot survive. There is a question of then pursuing knowledge. And therefore, externally only partial renunciation is possible. Total renunciation is possible only internally. Then what is this internal renunciation? That will be the question. So internal renunciation is nothing but you discover that you basically, as a reality, is not associated with anything in the creation. You are unrelated basically to anything. Just as a space accommodates everything, but the space is not connected to, hooked to anything. Same way, if space is connected to any object, Then when the object travels, the space also will travel. But we know very well that basically space, even though accommodates everything, space does not travel. Space is not connected to anything, and therefore space is called asangam. So this is called renunciation, in which it is free from any kind of relationship. Like the other example is that screen. The screen, the movie basically is asangam. So screen is associated with every scene in the movie, basically. The water in the movie, but still the water in the movie does not, wet the screen. Fire in the movie does not, burn the screen, because the screen is asangaha. So it is intimately closer to the movie. The screen is intimately closer to the movie, but not tainted by anything which is going on in the movie. And so this asangatvam, is a swarupa of a atma. And when I recognize that, my asanga swarupam, I know that I accommodate everything, yet I am not related to anything. I am free from, I'm not tainted by anything. And the reason is very simple, actually, that I is a reality of everything, and everything other than me, what the name and form basically is mithya, and mithya thing cannot touch the reality, the satyam. And therefore, I, even though I accommodate everything, everything is non-separate from me. So this kind of a wisdom is called real renunciation, which is internal renunciation. And so this understanding of relationlessness is sannyasa. And this kind of renunciation takes place through the wisdom. And such a person, even will he move with everyone, he is not attached to the person. He loves everyone, but not hooked to any person. And he lives in every place, but he is not rooted in any place, this is born out of inner. This kind of understanding is born out of inner renunciation. And after this inner renunciation is possible, this kind of a renunciation is possible only through the jnana, which is called vidvat sannyasa. A formal sannyasa which is ultimately taken to gain this wisdom is called vividisha sannyasa. Vividisha means veditum ichha. You want to know the self, by which you really become so that you can really become this vidvat sannyasa. You can really know yourself, that you are unconnected to everything. And so to gain inner renunciation, sometimes a formal renunciation also people take. But ultimately, the sannyasa is real renunciation, is this inner renunciation. And that is how, this is the main topic here, to gain the wisdom and to become a vidvat sannyasi, to know myself, which is unrelated to everything, which pervades everything, which is intimately associated with everything, yet which is not tainted by everything. To know this, the reality of this self, is the topic here in this 5th chapter. And that's how this chapter is called sannyasa yoga, etc., inner detachment through the knowledge. And so we should also gain the wisdom, and how to gain this wisdom, so that we will not be also affected, tainted by anything in the creation, any situation, any object, any person. That is the topic here right now, from verse number 13 to verse number 21. And in that, we saw the bhashyam also of verse 15, and saw the detailed meaning also of verse 15. We have also seen the meaning of verse 16, but we have not covered the bhashyam in the last class. But anyway, before I go into the bhashyam of verse 16, I would like to discuss 2 or 3 points which I missed in the last class. That is, first, regarding the verse 15. So we should know here, Bhagavan says, if you see verse 14 and verse 15, you will find one thing, that Bhagavan says, na kartrutvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabhu, na karma phala sanyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Means I am not I, as a knower of this self, definitely Ishvara knows himself. So na karma, na kartrutvam, na karma phala sanyogam, etc., etc. So lokasya srijati prabhu, I don't create anything. Means I am not a karta, basically, of this creation, etc. So I am free from the kartrutva. That's what Bhagavan says in verse 14. And also in verse 15, Bhagavan says, nadatte kasyachit papam, nachaiva sukrutam vibhu. I don't take anybody's punya papa also. I'm not a bhokta also. And so people offer varieties of the pujas and everything. Well, but I don't take. So I'm free from very bhoktrutvam also. So Bhagavan here says that as a jnani, as if he's talking not only about himself, one who knows this self, one who knows the reality of the self, he will also say the same thing, that I am free from kartrutvam. I'm no more a karta, I'm no more a bhokta, etc. And Atma also has been defined like this. In the chapter 2, it has been defined like that. Nayam hanti na hanyate, etc. I am Atma na hanti na hanyate. The self does not kill anybody, means it's not basically an agent of an action called killing, or na hanyate. It does not become an object of killing also. Well, bhoktrutam also. So Atma is not a karta bhokta also. Sometime for Jnani also it has been said that Jnani is not a karta bhokta. And so, so by presenting in two different ways, indirectly Bhagavan wants to communicate one thing, that Jnani and Atma are one alone. Atma is a karta bhokta, Jnani is a karta bhokta. Then we should understand that Jnani and Atma are one alone. Jnani is a Jnani when he really identifies with the self, which is the reality of myself, that is, I am a karta bhokta. So in this process of identifying with the self, real self, which is a karta bhokta, is called nididhyasana. And so if we say that Atma is a karta bhokta, and then if I say that I have to exhaust my prarabdha, etc., then definitely, that there is a distance between what I know and what I am. What I know is that Atma is a karta bhokta. But well, I have to exhaust my prarabdha, means definitely I have to undergo varieties of the experience in the life. Then I take myself to be bhokta. Well, definitely then there is a gap between what I know and what I think about myself. And then, we have to breach that gap. And that is that process of bridging these two things, bridging what I know and what I take myself to be. That gap in between has to be bridged together. And that process of bridging together, is called nididhyasanam. And definitely, once I know myself that I am free from kartrutva and bhoktrutva, then only I will become free from threefold fears, which I talked about in the last class. Basically, I will become free from the fear of the papam, fear of narakam, and fear of punarjanma, etc. That will go away, because they basically scratch each other's back. Kartrutvam will definitely leads to bhaya. If you are karta, and if something is done wrongly, and which is really not a right thing in terms of shastra, etc., well, then definitely we'll have a fear of papam, etc. So kartrutvam and will definitely bring this bhayam, and then definitely you will feel that you will have to suffer. So you will take yourself bhokta also. One who is a karta is a bhokta also. And so, and bhayam will definitely bring this kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam. And so if you have a fear of this, fear of a sin, fear of a narakam, etc., and fear of a punarjanma, etc., rebirth, etc., then definitely you will definitely do certain actions which will keep you away from all these things. And so definitely you will take yourself to be karta, because you say, I will do such actions which will will keep me away from all these things. So bhayam will enhance kartrutvam. I will definitely makes it rooted, this kartrutvam bhoktrutvam will definitely give rise to the fear. And therefore they basically scratch each other's back. And I gave a solution also last time, how to become free from this thing, because both are dependent upon each other. So but ultimately this is a solution, is this in between interim solution is which I talked about yesterday. But finally the solution is one should be awake to about the reality of oneself, that I am not a karta, I am not a bhokta. In my presence, everything takes place. That's a different thing. In my presence, mind thinks. In my presence, I see. In my presence, ears hear. In my presence, every function takes place, basically. But I myself do not do any action, and I'm not an experiencer or enjoyer of any karma phala, as of any consequence also. So anyway, and then the question would be, well, definitely regarding, because Bhashyakara has mentioned Kimartham tarhi bhaktahi, in the verse 15 Bhashyam only, Kimartham tarhi bhaktahi pujadi lakshanam yagadana homadikam cha sukrutam prayujyate. Why then people are doing this pujas, etc.? Because you said, Bhagavan, you said, well, you don't take anybody's punya papa, you will not receive all this, somebody does offers a puja to you, well, you will receive, you will definitely, enjoys that puja, you experience, you take those karmas also. No, I won't take, Bhagavan said. Then why people are offering all this? That was a question. So basically, we should understand this puja driven by kartrutvam and bhayam should go. Well, because bhayam is based on kartrutvam, I said, and kartrutvam it's a delusion, it's basically a conclusion which is wrong about yourself. Kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam is a conclusion about yourself which is wrong. That's called moha. Well, ultimately, so puja which is driven by this wrong conclusion that I am a karta, etc., and bhayam also, we do puja of Ishvara because out of bhayam also, well, that will go because gaining this knowledge. Then the puja, well, if you are really doing a nididhyasana in order to assimilate what you know now about yourself and what you take yourself to be still karta, etc., well, and I told you, you are bridging the gap through nididhyasana. So while doing nididhyasana also, well, still puja, etc., will continue. Panchamaha Agnyas may continue. And then it is not driven by kartrutvam or bhayam, but it is driven by shraddha and samskara. And therefore, let's not take this way, because that may give a understanding, and it will be a wrong understanding, that Bhashyakara wants to tells us to drop the puja, etc. Well, that's not the criteria here. So Shankaracharya ji does not ask us to drop this puja, etc., but to drop the cause of puja, definitely. And the cause of doing puja either may be a fear, or either I take myself to be the agent of an action, and definitely doing puja, etc. Well, the punyam, etc. will come, which will translate into favorable situations, which I want to enjoy, etc. So taking yourself to be a bhokta also. So Bhashyakara says, well, that you have to drop. Your puja need not be dropped, but puja out of that bhayam or that wrong conclusion about yourself, kartrutvam, etc., has to be dropped, because now you have gained knowledge and you are trying to get an abundance into that. And during that period also, well, when you are bridging the gap between what you know and what you take yourself to be, well, out of viparita bhavana, etc., which I will be talking about that. So that definitely during that period also you can continue with the puja, but that is just out of samskara and shraddha, not out of bhayam and kartrutva. So this is the thing. This is a point which I wanted to clarify. So I have touched the verse 15 again, and now let's see this verse number 16. In that that also we have seen, and here it says Atmanaha Ajnanam. We will just do a syntax of that. Atmanaha Ajnanam, Atmanaha Jnanena. Well, Yesham Nashitam Bhavati, or Yesham Atmanaha Ajnanam, Atmanaha Jnanena Nashitam Bhavati. And so basically Atmanaha Ajnanam, which kind of Ajnanam that Bhashyakara, because Bhagavan says Tad Ajnanam, that ignorance. When that ignorance means which kind of ignorance? And so that has been told in the verse 15 itself. Ajnanena avrutam jnanam. Ajnanena avrutam jnanam tena mukhyanti jantavaha. Well, basically, the knowledge about yourself is as though covered by the ignorance. That ignorance. Well, tad ajnanam. That is atmanaha jnanam. That is the self-ignorance. Well, nashitam bhavati. Well, get destroyed. By what? Atmanaha jnanena. So basically, so any knowledge can destroy any ignorance. Well, that's not true. Depending upon, so definitely a particular knowledge can destroy a particular ignorance, and therefore physics knowledge can destroy physics ignorance, chemistry knowledge can destroy chemistry ignorance. Same way, well, you have a self-ignorance that will be destroyed only by self-knowledge. And so, and then how to gain that self-knowledge, that also we discussed. That has been already told in the chapter 4 by Bhagavan, and that is tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha means one has to pursue the knowledge, definitely, because one is aware of, one is not, one doesn't know oneself. Then definitely you should gain a self knowledge, but then the pursuit of self knowledge, which is called Jnana Yoga. And for that, one has to resort to the means of knowledge called Praman, called Shastra. And then, well, Shastra does not unlock to me and does not give me the self knowledge. The words have to be wielded properly, the context have to be created, etc. And therefore, a teacher is required. And therefore, basically, a systematic and consistent study of this Vedantic text, scriptures, basically, for a length of time under the guidance of a competent teacher, well, basically, is competent acharya, is called Jnana Yoga. And so, by that method, one should gain self-knowledge, which will destroy the self-ignorance. Then what will happen? Well, what will this knowledge do? So then Bhagavan says, Tesham jnanam tat param prakashayati. Tesham jnanam. So for those wise people, jnanam means this knowledge, well, prakashayati, will reveal the self. Our reality about myself. They will reveal the Brahman, will reveal the self. Now, this seems to be it needs a little clarification in this, because basically, if the words of Shastra reveal the self, means self is not able to reveal itself. Definitely, suppose if this clip is revealed by my eyes, if clip cannot be revealed if I do not operate the means of knowledge. Well, if my eyes do not fall on this object called clip, then definitely this clip cannot be revealed. Same way, the words of the Shastra and the teacher combined together illumine the self, when self is not self-illumining, self is not self-revealing, which is a contradiction. If self is self-revealing, it does not require any means of knowledge, even words. And so this sentence should be understood little properly, that here Bhagavan says, Tesham, for those wise people, that param prakashayati, that Brahman is illumined, basically. So Brahman is revealed by this jnanam, by this Atma Jnanam, which is, definitely through the words of teacher and Shastra, of course. So this is to be understood little, and therefore I'll be touching this topic, how this Jnanam takes place. What does it do actually? And so, when you listen to the teacher, and Shastra, of course, talks about the self in so many words. I mean, what is the self? Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Sabhava. So many words are used ultimately to give the self knowledge. And so all these words are basically, words referring to the nature of oneself, reality of oneself. And so we are not employing all these words. Like if I use a word Shuddham, Atma Shuddha. So it doesn't mean that basically I have to see Shuddhatvam in Atma. When I say Atma is Satya, I have not to see Satyatvam in Atma. Basically, so you do not see Shuddham or you do not see the Shuddhatvam in Atma. You do not see the Satyatvam in Atma. I'll explain what is it. And so basically, these words, so many words, basically don't reveal what Atma is actually. But what happens is, you have already some notions, conclusions about yourself. All those words basically help you to drop those conclusions. And thereby the self-revealing self is revealed, which is self-revealing. And therefore you don't, the Shabda basically, the words which are used here to indicate the nature of the self, they really, you have not to see that kind of thing in the Atma. When I said, as I told you, Atma Shuddha means you should not see the purity in the Atma. I mean, so purity of the Atma is as though revealed now by the words. It's not like that. Basically, you take yourself to be, I am Ashuddha. That's the conclusion you have. So when it is told to you through the teacher, that you are Shuddha, Shastra tells you through the teacher that you are Shuddha, you will drop the notion that I am Ashuddha. So you become free from the notion that I am Ashuddha. That is how this Brahma Jnanam takes place, self-knowledge takes place. Self-knowledge, it doesn't mean that self is revealed by the words of the uh, teacher or a Shastra. Well, if it is so, then Shabda also is a means of knowledge. If means of knowledge reveal the self, then definitely self is not self-revealing. It is revealed by the Pramana. The way this thing is revealed by the eyes. And this is possible here because this thing is inert. And any inert thing cannot reveal itself. But that is not the case with the consciousness. Consciousness is self-revealing. And therefore, well, there is self-knowledge also. But we'll discuss. But so basically, the criteria is self is not revealed by the words of the Shastra or the teacher. So basically, when you study, basically, well, you listen all these things regarding the nature of the self. All the words are used: Shuddha, Buddha, Mukta, Nitya, Satyam or Jnanam and Anantam, etc. All these things. You keep on. You start dropping the conclusions which are wrong, of course, because born of self-ignorance, and you start dropping those conclusions. And then when you drop, then self-revealing self basically will be known to you as it is. What that is the reality of yourself, you will know. So basically, these words which are born of conclusions are dropped. Conclusions only go away in the wake of knowledge. So I am subject to Ragadvesha is one conclusion. I am subject to Kartrutvam Bhoktrum, another conclusion. I am subject to Punya Papa, impurities, is another conclusion. I am subject to Sukha Dukkha, well, another conclusion. I am subject to old age or death, etc., is another conclusion. I am subject to attachments. All these are conclusions centered on the self, born of self-ignorance. And so the self basically is opposed to all these conclusions. And so I am Ashuddha is a conclusion. And then Shastra, with the help of teacher, tells you are Shuddha. And therefore, well, and that's a fact about you. That's a reality about you. And then word Shuddha comes from the conclusion, Aham Ashuddha. So if you have not concluded, Shastra should not have told you. Should not have told you. Why Shastra should use so many words? Atma is Atma. And if it is self-revealing, then why should, well, definitely Shastra should have used so many words. Satyaha, Nityaha, Buddhaha, Muktaha. So many words, Shuddhaha. All these words are used for what? Because I have infinite notions about myself, infinite wrong conclusions about myself, and Shastra has to tell in so many words. So, and every word will help you to drop a particular conclusion about yourself, and thereby you become free from the wrong conclusions, and then you will know as it is. Definitely, you will not be, after dropping the conclusions, no word should come and should reveal yourself, because you are self-revealing, self-illuminating, and therefore you will know. Self-illuminating self basically is revealed as it is, because the conclusions are dropped about yourself. So I am Ashuddha, well, I am subject to Punya Papa, well, you don't need the word Shuddha actually, but the word Shuddha is purely to remove my wrong conclusions that I am Ashuddha. So Shuddhatvam is nothing but giving up the notion of Ashuddhatvam regarding the self, regarding myself. So similarly, we have to understand all such words in the same way, including Bandha and Moksha. So, well, Atma does not gain moksha by this knowledge. Well, moksha is a swarupa of Atma. Moksha is basically means moksha means a freedom. So Atma is free. Free from what? Free from all the conclusions which you are entertaining about yourself. All the conclusions. Until you go to Shastra, well, definitely you have so many conclusions about yourself. And so you consider yourself as a limited entity. You consider yourself as a bound entity. And well, that's wrong. In fact, basically you are free from all this conclusion, including bondage. And so Bandha and Moksha, etc. also, they are not really required. But since you take yourself to be bound, well, you are told that you are Moksha Sarupa, you are free. So from any standpoint, you will find moksha is a very wonderful word actually. I am Ashuddha, impure is a conclusion about yourself. I am free from the notion of I am Ashuddha is a moksha. I will repeat once again. I am free from the notion of I am Ashuddha, or I am free from the notion that I am Ashuddha. is moksha. Free, moksha. So I am bound is a conclusion. I am free from the notion that I am bound is moksha. And so I am free from the notion of I am karta. Well, right now we were discussing, right? Kartrutvam, Atma is free from kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam. Means what? You have not to see, well, that akartrutvam in Atma. Well, through words. Now, as though the words work like a torch. And, and I am seeing that, oh, yeah, Atma does not have any characteristic or any dharma called kartrutvam. It's not like that. You are already entertaining a notion about yourself that I am a karta. And so you become free from this notion by when it is said Atma is akarta, means you are akarta. When you hear this, basically you will drop the notion that you are karta and you become free. This is called moksha. And so we can understand why the word moksha is a common word, basically pointing out the freedom from all conclusions. So we use even moksha can be used. Atma is moksha, free. But that doesn't work. Instead of just one word called moksha, you can understand the versatility of this word. Moksha is a very wonderful word. Free. Free means free from any notion which you entertain about yourself. It can be told, but that doesn't work. Because I do not become free from all the wrong conclusions about myself. And so I take myself to be bound only. And therefore, Shastra is compelled to use so many words. Nityaha, Shuddhaha, Buddhaha, Muktaha, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam. All these words. You take yourself to be basically a very limited entity. And therefore, you are told that you are limitless, Ananta, etc. And so, basically, all these words, really speaking, Shuddhaha, Buddhaha, etc. Well, all these words can be converted into one word called moksha, right? Because Shuddha means I am free from the notion that I am ashuddha. So I am free from the notion that I am karta. I am free from the notion that I am bhokta. I am free from the notion that I am a limited entity. I am free from the notion that I am a mortal being. You are satyam, basically. You are existence. And existence by nature. And therefore, there will never be a case that you will be a non-existent, because that's, existence is your nature. And therefore, there is no question of a mortality. Mortality means you take yourself, you are subject to death. That's already a notion about myself. And well, so one day I will be, I will cease to exist. Well, that's the wrong thing. You are satyam. You are existence by nature. So that every word and will ultimately, you take yourself to be ignorant person. You have been told you are jnana swarupa. It's a consciousness. Anyway, so these are all the words which are used by Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, between verse 12 to 25, and elsewhere, everywhere in the 13th chapter, and every place wherever Bhagavan got a chance to, to remind Arjuna about who you are, basically. Well, so many words have been told, but when somebody asked this question to me, that Atma is moksha, then why you use this Atma is nitya shuddha? Because I entertain so many wrong notions about myself, and to drop each notion, Shastra uses this word, and that is how ultimately you are free from all the notions, and so you are moksha, you are Brahman, you are limitless, and this is how knowledge takes place. We should understand. Shastra, words of the Shastra do not work like a torch. Without that torch, the lighted torch, without the torch, the object is not seen. Same way, without these words, basically, Atma can never be revealed. No, it's not like that. Atma is self-revealing, and therefore, self-revealing is a thing. Anything which is self-revealing. Here, consciousness alone is self-revealing, here nothing else. But a consciousness is self-revealing. It means it does not require any means of knowledge to reveal itself. In fact, means of knowledge are revealed by that. Anyway, let's not go into that. So this is how Bhagavan says here, Tesham jnanam tatparam prakashayati. Tesham for these people, wise people who know this reality about themselves. Basically, this tatparam, that Brahman is is prakashayati, is illumined as though by this the self-knowledge, which is in the form of words, etc. So we should understand this. Here it has been Bhagavan gives a Example here, Adityavat. So just as without Aditya, nothing is illumined. And when Aditya comes, the sun arises in the eastern sky in the morning and everything is illumined. Same way, well, the words of the Shastra, basically, well, self-knowledge, well, illumine the self. Otherwise, a self is not illumined. We should understand it properly. That's how I have touched this topic. Now, in this verse 16, we'll go to Bhashyam also. And but two more points has to be discussed. One point is discussed by Bhashyakara, and the second point is discussed by one Tikakara, which are really good. I would like to little discuss. But let's go before what the Tikakara discusses. Before that, let's go to the Bhashya. It says here, Jnanena tu yena ajnanena avrutaha muhyanti jantavaha tad ajnanam. So basically, yena ajnanena jantavaha avrutaha muhyanti. Basically, this yena ajnanena, by which ignorance, well, which covered by which ignorance, ultimately this jantavaha, this living beings and human being, let's say, muhyan, they are all deluded. And the tad ajnanam, yesham jantuna, for those human beings, well, ultimately that ajnanam, that ignorance, viveka jnanena atma vishayena viveka jnanena nashitam bhavati. And nashitam bhavat. So by this discriminative knowledge, well, ultimately that self-ignorance will go away. What kind of self-ignorance? Which has covered the knowledge of the self. That ignorance will be destroyed by this self-knowledge. That is aham brahmasmi, etc., which is called self-knowledge. That will destroy the self-ignorance. And nothing but that's not only self-ignorance. When we say it destroys self-ignorance, we have to also include all the conclusions regarding the self, which are born of self-ignorance. So all they are get destroyed. I become free from all the notions or all the wrong conclusions born of self-ignorance. When self-ignorance goes away through self-knowledge that I am Brahman, which is moksha sarupa, which is free from all the notions which I entertain about myself, well, then all the conclusions along with the ignorance go away. And what kind of a jnanam, says viveka atma vishayena viveka jnana. So here, the object of the knowledge. So here, if you see Atmanaha Jnanam Bhagavan, Atmanaha Jnanin, Bhagavan says, Atmanaha Jnanin means the Jnanam whose object is ultimately Atma. So Atmanaha is a Karmani Shashti. So basically, Karmani Shashti means an object. That object of the knowledge is what? Atma here. So Atmanaha Jnanin. And what is that? What is the nature of this knowledge? What is the nature of the self-knowledge? Viveka Jnani. So Viveka Jnani, well, definitely, it refers. So it shows Viveka Jnanam means basically discriminative knowledge, and definitely that is born of discriminative inquiry also. And this inquiry will definitely, which is called discriminative inquiry, is different from a simple inquiry. A simple inquiry is an inquiry about something which you just don't know. Totally don't know, like inquiry regarding black hole, or inquiry regarding a particular star, inquiry regarding Jupiter or anything. So inquiry regarding a moon, you don't know anything about it, suppose, and then this is called a simple inquiry, in which you don't know anything about a given thing. But when you know something and yet you don't know, there is some confusion, then definitely a discriminative inquiry is required. And therefore, so this is a case here. So you know yourself and yet you don't know. And in that case, well, a discriminative inquiry is required. And you can understand this, that, I am, and that is refers to the self. And therefore, in that you know very well. Without inquiry also, you know this much, that you are. Means I stands for a consciousness and M stands for existence. At least I am an existent conscious being. You know this much. So that much self-knowledge you have. But basically more than that, after I used to love something with the I, and that is really not a part of me. That's a wrong conclusion. So I am a human being. So definitely this human body which is really a non-self. Well, I lumped with the self called I am. So, and therefore, that shows that you know yourself as I am, but yet you don't know yourself, and because the non-self you are superimposing upon the self, and therefore definitely that shows what is called non-self and what is called self. You are not clear. The self is just I am, means I am an existence consciousness, that's all. And therefore, as an existence consciousness, I am not really limited to anything. When I a limitation to that I arises when I definitely that self which is consciousness I lump together with the body. The body's limitations become the limitation of the self, and therefore it means the self how you don't know and in a correct manner, and non-self also you don't know. And therefore then definitely due to this aviveka, and that is due to self-ignorance, where definitely ajnanam leads to this aviveka. You don't know the self, you don't know the non-self also, and definitely then you lump together, and that give rise to an entity called ego. It's an entity. Ego is nothing but it's a lumping of a self plus non-self. Cannot be lumped together. You know very well. It cannot be lumped together because they are of opposite things. That's the one thing. Second thing, self and non-self cannot be lumped together, in as much as non-self is not an entity, real entity also. It's a mithya thing. It's just an apparent thing, and the self is a reality. Well, so real and non-real cannot be mixed together. That we know, like a person in a waking, a boy in a waking cannot marry a girl in a dream, right? And so he still is a brahmachari, but so he is now, yesterday night he saw a dream that he has married somebody in a dream, and next morning when he got up he said, I'm married. So that cannot be true. So these two things of a different order of reality cannot be mixed together. So satya and mithya cannot be mixed together. And as well as I told you, satyam, which is, the consciousness and this inert thing also of opposite characteristic cannot be mixed together. But in absence of the knowledge of the self and non-self, well, definitely that such a aviveka is there, that I mix together. And so what you require is a viveka jnana. So, well, you know yourself that I am, but you should not say further. That's a knowledge. I am is a knowledge. Really speaking, is a knowledge, and it is there. So self-knowledge is there. For that, you need not have any means of knowledge. You need not operate any means of knowledge. Just for I am. And I definitely, you can understand, when I say I, it proves that I am a conscious being. Am, well, that verb is used for existence, right? Which is a present tense, but it's for existence. So I am is very, very, that much knowledge you have. But if you are really knowing the self as existence and consciousness, you would not have lumped with non-self, but we lump, not you and me both. We lump together. So I'm a human being, I'm this, I'm good, bad, etc. Whatever. I'm depressed or I'm hungry, whatever. Varieties about depending upon the body, mind, sense complex, which is non-self. At every point of a time, well, I always superimpose one thing or the other, either body, either mind, either senses, either the dharmas of prana, etc., either intellect, and I say I'm knowledgeable, I'm engineer, etc., etc. Many things I superimpose, and this lumping together is called aviveka. And so what you require is a viveka jnana. So here Bhashyakara says atma vishayena viveka jnana. Definitely. Regarding Atma, it is not that you just don't know anything about yourself. You know yourself. You are a conscious being. You are existent right now. Everything you know. But you lump. You take yourself as an individual, lumping a non-self upon you, and which is called ego, which is called individuality, which is called a jiva, etc., which is really not possible, which is really not existent also, because cannot be mixed together also. One is mithya, one is satyam, but this is how a ego is born, out of a aviveka. And therefore what you require is, well, words of the Shastra tells you that you are not a karta bhokta, you are not a jiva, you are not individual, well, you are not jiva, etc., but you are just yourself. So don't lump what is non-self, you should not lump with the self, etc. And for that, you are required to know who you are as a self and what is non-self. Both you should know distinctly. That's called Vivek Jnana. And that Vivek Jnanena, this Atmanah Vivek Jnanena, this Atmanah Jnanam Nashitam Bhavati. Self-knowledge will ultimately destroy self-ignorance. Tesham, for such a jnani people, for such a wise people, Adityavati, yatha Aditya samastam rupajatam avabhasayati, just as a Aditya, the sun, definitely samastam, completely rupajatam, entire world, well, basically, avabhasayati, illumines this entire world completely. Tadvat, jnanam gneyam vastu sarvam prakashayati, this jnanam means this vritti, aham brahmasmi, jnana vritti, basically, well, ultimately, gneyam vastu, that is, which is the object of knowledge, called this Paramartha Tattvam, Brahman, etc. Prakashati, illumines. So the words of the Shastra through the teacher will generate this vritti in the mind, Brahmasmi vritti, and ultimately destroys the ignorance pertaining to self. And so I will use the word I am, but then I will not say I am human being. And even if it's in transaction, you may say, well, in transaction, you have to say, depending upon the situation, you will have to say. Just as an actor will know himself now totally, but depending upon the script and the role given to him, he will say. But that he knows that that is not the reality of himself. So same way, I also know that I am Brahman now, but depending upon transaction, still I will take that this ego as a empirical reality for this just as for actor, a role basically is an empirical reality. Let's say that way. So knowing actor knows himself what he is, and still, well, depending upon the role, he may say anything, I'm beggar, etc. Well, same way, I know now that, well, I am existence consciousness, which is limitless, Brahman. But through the words of the Shastra, that's called self-knowledge, and it gets this, the self-ignorance gets destroyed, and the self is as though illumined. Now you can understand how I have told you the process. So as though these words of the Shastra has revealed Brahman, we should understand in which manner it has revealed. By dropping the wrong conclusions born of self-ignorance, along with the self-ignorance, well, it goes, and the self-revealing self, well, now shines in its own glory, that I am Brahman. So this is how we have to understand. So we should start. For a transaction, you can tell that I am a human being, etc. And just as a role, the actor tells, and depending upon the script in a movie, he definitely says I am so and so, but that's not a reality about himself. Same way, ego is not a reality of myself. Individuality is not a reality of myself. Jiva is not a reality of myself. I am Brahman. But depending upon the situation, I as though identify with the body, mind, sense complex, which is non-self, and assumes a given role and transact with the world. So this is the thing. Now here, this jnanena ajnanam nashitam bhavati, it has been told. Now word jnanam actually has a two meaning, because satyam jnanam anantam brahma also is there, right? So as though the atma, which is jnana sarupam, that jnanam word is used here. Well, that's not the case. Here jnanam means jnana vritti we have to take, which arises in the mind when you listen to the words of the teacher, which is of course from the scripture only. When you hear that a particular vritti arises regarding the self in your mind, well, that you are Brahman, etc., and you are Shuddha, etc., well, whatever, you are Nitya, and well, that jnana vritti also is called jnanam, and swarupa, well, basically of myself. The reality of myself is I am jnanam, means I am consciousness. So then word jnanam, suppose, is indicating a swarupa jnanam, a reality of myself, nature of myself. In that jnanam cannot destroy jnana. That jnanam cannot destroy, because here says jnanena ajnanam nashitam bhavati. Then jnanena means that the consciousness destroys ajnanam. The swarupa jnanam destroys ignorance. No, that cannot. If that would be the case, well, then I am consciousness is a reality. And definitely then then the Jnana would not stand. Because if Swarupa Jnanam, I am a Jnana Swarupa, right? I am Prajnanam Brahma, etc. Vijnanam Brahma, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That Jnanam Brahma, so if Swarupa Jnanam, well, is indicated by here word Jnanena, then that cannot destroy ignorance. That cannot destroy ignorance. If otherwise, nobody would be ignorant, because by nature I am Jnana Swarupa. Then Ajnanam cannot stand. So then no one would be the ignorant. So we have to take another meaning of word jnana, and that is jnana vritti, born of in a shravan, well, born of the words of the teacher, along with the shastra, well, or born of the words of the shastra, well, through the teacher, whatever you say. So that jnana vritti alone can destroy ignorance. Not this jnanam means by sarupa. Consciousness cannot destroy, because consciousness illumines the jnana. Consciousness shares existence with the jnana. The whatever ajnanam is, what yat kinchit I'm going to say about it. Well, that ajnana, whatever the existence of it may be, seeming existence or whatever, but that existence is borrowed from the consciousness itself, which is existence by nature. So, and therefore, consciousness in fact sustains ajnana. Consciousness illumines the jnanam, and therefore, basically, jnanam is non-separate from this myself. What I'm saying is ultimately that cannot destroy it. Only jnana vritti, that is indicated by word jnana. Jnanina means this jnana vrittya, by this vritti, which is arising in mind through the pramana, operating pramana called shastra, etc. That will destroy the jnanam of the mind. Now, this is a bhashya. Now, one more point I would like to discuss is, which is discussed by Madhusudan Saraswati, and that's very important. It's not much technical, but then we should know, because this comes often also whenever we study all this bhashyam and everything. So, what is here? It's a little technical point. Of course, when I say it is not, but it is a technical point. But I would like to take your time before we proceed further. In verse number 17, and it is what is this ajnana? Now, you know, the stands for many has a many meaning. Ajnanam is like ahimsa is there. Ahimsa means people take it as himsa means a violence, and ahimsa means absence of violence. Well, that is not correct actually. Because the himsa, the violation, the violence is involved in the creation. Certain violence in fact is there, and for the sustenance also. And therefore, there it has been taken and addressed as a value for a human being, that it is impossible that the person will be totally non-violent, absence of violence. It is impossible. At least at the mental level also, even if you don't want, if you are not alert and you hurt at the level of a thought, person can do that. And therefore, total is not possible. Otherwise, also physically also, even if you don't want, certain thing gets killed by you, and even if you boil water, bacteria gets killed, etc. So there, ahimsa, in that the A stands for alpam. So you can minimize the himsa. Ahimsa means a minimization of violence. Then A stands for, well, like, they say there is no salt in this particular item, in a food item. There is no salt. Alavanam, they call. Lavanam means salty. Alavanam, there is no salt. Really speaking, it may happen that the person, this wife must have added a little bit of salt, but that's not enough. So this person who is eating that, well, say like that it is alavanam. There is no salt in this. There is a salt, but less salt. So A stands for alpam. A stands for virodham, opposition also. Amanitvam, right? That's a value given by Bhagavan, amanitvam. So manitvam means, well, basically, a demand for a respect. Amanitvam. So definitely it indicates a absence of. There we should not take, we should have a little bit of demand for respect, etc. No, there it is a total. So there A stands for absence of. Amanitvam That the A stands for absence of manitvam, means absence of a demand for a respect. Same way here, ajnanam. Jnanam, knowledge. Ajnanam means absence of knowledge. And well, some of the people, they have taken some of the acharyas, Vedantic acharyas, some of the Vishishtadvaitin, and I mean Vishishtadvaitin and Nyaya Vaisheshikas also taking this ajnanam, self-ignorance, which is the cause of all. This is a fundamental problem, right? Prajnanam, aviveka, and then ego, and etc. etc. So all this, that ajnanam, self-ignorance, there they say, well, definitely there is an absence of self-knowledge. Absence of knowledge, absence of self-knowledge, basically. That is how certain people, certain Vedantic acharyas, as well as Vishtadvaitin and Nyaya Vaisheshikas take the ajnanam as a abhava rupam, absence, non-existence of knowledge here. And whether it is correct or not, well, and they give example also. They say darkness is generally understood as a absence of light. Same way we have to take ignorance is generally understood as a absence of knowledge, and absence of knowledge is non-existence of knowledge. So it's a negative entity. And and books have been written on this, but our traditional acharyas say no, it's not correct. This ajnana is not a negative entity. It is not a non-existence of knowledge. It has some kind of an existence. They call yat kinchit bhavarupam. Bhavarupam means say existence. Yat kinchit, some kind of an existence of this ignorance is there. And Sureshwaracharya ji in Naishkarma Siddhi also discusses this point in chapter 3. And why I'm mentioning here that in order to answer such people who takes ajnanam as an absence of knowledge, well, we are getting an answer from verse number 15 and 16. That's how I'm discussing this point here. Verse 15, Bhagavan says, well, ajnanena avrutam jnanam bhavati. Ajnanena avrutam. So ajnanam covers this discriminative capacity, discriminative power of our intellect, basically. So if something covers our discriminative capacity, it should be existent entity or a non-existent entity. Definitely existent entity. Non-existent thing cannot cover anything. Anything which covers has existence, and therefore ajnanam cannot be taken as just a non-existent or absence of knowledge, means non-existence of knowledge. We should not take that way. That is, the answer has been given by Bhagavan in the chapter, in the verse number 15. And also verse number 16 also gives an answer for this. And in verse 16, Bhagavan says, Jnanam destroys ajnana. Knowledge destroys ajnana. Self-knowledge destroys self-ignorance. Well, so Madhusudan Saraswati says, well, this, if a knowledge, self-knowledge destroys self-ignorance, then self-knowledge, if you take ajnanam as a non-existent entity, absence, then self-knowledge cannot destroy a non-existent entity. What is destroyed must be an existent entity. And therefore, well, if self-knowledge destroys self-ignorance, Bhagavan says that in verse 16, definitely that self-ignorance is not a non-existent entity. Self-ignorance is a existent entity. What kind of existent is a seemingly existent entity, which we'll not go into that right now, but it has some kind of an existence. That is a point I wanted to discuss with you. And with this, well, we have completed verse 16, and verse 17 will start after a break of 20-25 minutes. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Drishyamana Nagari Tulyan Nijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahiribodbhutai Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namahidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Bijasyantarivangkuro Jagadidam Prang Nirvikalpam Punaha Maya Kalpita Desha Kala Kalana Vaichitra Chitrikritam Mayaviva Vijrumbhayatyaphi Mahayogi Vayasvechaya Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namahidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namahidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Grathitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatva Manusandadhami Bhagavad Gite Bhavadveshinim Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapadakramopanishadaihi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavasthitatangadena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na Vidussura Suraganaha Devaya Tasmai Namaha Devaya Tasmai. Verse 17. Tadbuddhayastadatmanah tannishthaastatparayanaah gacchantya punaravrittim jnana nirdhuta kalmashaah. So now here Bhagavan talks about various stages of disciplines by which a person gains such a wisdom. That person has to, as though, go from LKG to up to the post graduation. I mean, varieties of the stages in order to gain education. Same way here also. Well, definitely one has to go through certain stages in order to gain ultimately the moksha. So those, the stages have been described here, and so ultimately person gains a wisdom and gains freedom. And we'll rearrange the words here for the sake of convenience here, and so that we'll have a chronological order of various stages. So that parayanaha, which is there at the end in the first line, we will take it the first. Tat parayanaha means tat means that Brahman, my own nature, the limitlessness. Well, definitely the reality about me, that which is parayanaha, that is the ultimate goal of the life. So that Brahman, limitlessness, or the reality about me is the goal of life. Then, well, how can I become I become a goal of myself? Because right now you take yourself to be an individual, a limited being. And a limited being has a goal of limitlessness. A limited being does not want to be a limited being, does not want to be limited. A person doesn't want a physical limitation. Person doesn't want a limitation in terms of emotion. Person doesn't want a limitation in terms of knowledge. Person doesn't want a limitation in terms of even the power in the senses. Person doesn't want a limitation in terms of a physiological functions. You don't want any kind of a limitation in circulation, in removing the waste from the body, or in digestion. So any kind of a thing, you don't want any type of limitation centered on the self. And you take yourself to be a limited being. And therefore, what will be the goal? The limitlessness is a goal. That limitlessness is the reality about me. And therefore, Tat is equal to that limitless self, which is actually a reality of me, which is a real I, let's say, becomes a goal for myself, who takes one, which I take myself to be an ego, an individual, a jiva. So for a jiva, the Brahman is a goal, we say. So I am a seeker and I am the sought, basically. The seeker is sought. That's what it is, actually. So tat parayanaha. Parayana means that goal, ultimate goal of my life. Well, is that means that Paramatma, that Brahman, which is the real nature of myself, which is real I, etc., is a goal. And if I take myself to be the ego, basically, then being limited, I have to depend upon various factors, external factors, in order to be happy, in order to be secure, in order to be peaceful. Because I take myself to be limited means limited in terms of security. I don't take myself to be a secure. If I take myself to be an individual being, definitely I will feel insecurity, because I have identified with something, a non-self, but which is subject to time, a body. I equate, as a ego means what? I equate myself. I actually a consciousness, basically. I equate myself with what? With this body. I take myself as a body. Then body is subject to time, limited in time, and therefore I have a sense of a limitation, and with respect to time. And definitely I feel insecure, because body undergoes varieties of the body is subject to varieties of the things. Body becomes a target for virus and bacteria and everything. So body is definitely prone to diseases and everything, and therefore, well, you take yourself to be like that, and definitely you will have a sense of insecurity, definitely. And so this is the limitation in terms of, if you take yourself to be limited, which really you are not, right? And then definitely, with yourself, you will not be comfortable. There will be a self-rejection. There will be, all the time, some kind of uneasiness going on. That is what we call sorrow in Bhagavad Gita. A sense of uneasiness, sense of discomfort with oneself, which if you just compare yourself in a moment of joy and other moments where you are not joyful, you will understand that. Not that you are positively, basically, sorrowful, etc. But that is actually a thought, a particular emotion in the mind. I'm not talking about it. But centered on oneself all the time, feeling a sense of discomfort, being limited. And so there is a self-rejection will be there, etc. And so basically, so if you take yourself to be ego, you will look out for varieties of the objects of happiness. Varieties of the objects, you look to varieties of the objects, basically, for security. For happiness, you look out. For security, you look out. And anyway, and definitely, then world being what it is not under your control. And therefore, well, definitely, you will have to fail several times. In that you desire a particular, you have a desire for a particular object for security or happiness, you may not get, or the object may come but will not bring a security and happiness the way you want it. And therefore, definitely, there is always a sense of dissatisfaction, and also stress and strain, because the world is not under your control. And therefore, in order to make it favorable to you, so that you will feel secure and happy, well, you strive a lot, but yet, since it is not under your control, and definitely you will fail also. That brings a lot of stress and strain until the things become favorable to you. So basically, and it is not just regarding inert objects, even the people with whom I have some relationship, basically. Every relationship also is subject to strain and problem, because I cannot control the behavior of other person. It's a part of Jagat. Like the objects are not under my control, people are also not under my control. And therefore, other person is, since he or she is not under my control, and it behaves not according to my wish, etc. Well, then it upsets me. And so, and that is how people always say that I do not know why my husband is like this, or why my wife is like that, why my children are like that, etc. And as the family expands, and well, definitely, then the number of people that can disturb you goes on increasing. When the list is big, the people of and the list of the people is so big that a number of people can disturb you. So that's how somebody very nicely said, "Sarvam paravasham dukkham." Well, sarvam paravasham means if you are dependent on external forces for security, happiness, comfort, well, definitely it is going to bring unhappiness in life. So very dependence on the external world is unhappiness. That's what they say. Sarvam paravasham dukkham. That paravasham itself is dukkham. Vasham means a dependence, and paravasham, dependency on external factor. So, and because all the time you should keep on adjusting, basically, the people, changing the people, and so all the time struggling actually to change situations, to change the people, constant adjustment of, I mean, basically we are of constant adjustment of the knobs of the world. And well, so as an ego, if I take myself to a limited being, then well, I will feel insecure because I'm a limited in time. And definitely a sense of limitation can, in order to get rid of that sense of limitation, you have a desire for varieties of objects, basically for happiness. And there you will look out naturally, because you don't take yourself to be a source of happiness. So you will always look, outside to the world for happiness. And well, the dependence itself brings this dukkha. So that's to make the change, to make the world favorable to you, basically. Such a change, you keep on changing. And at the end of the life, at the age of 80, you will realize that basically, that you cannot change the situations, cannot change the people, cannot change the situations all the time according to your wish, etc. And then the life becomes very miserable because you feel that's a failure. Ultimately, at the end of the life, well, there is a failure. Then what should be the intelligent attitude? That I should be happy and secure without depending on external factor, without depending on the non-self, right? And therefore, basically, I should be happy and secure in spite of the condition of the body. I should be happy and secure in spite of the condition of the mind. It's also part of the world. I should be happy and secure in spite of the condition of anything, of the body, mind, sense complex, or the world. So for happiness and security, you have to be dependent on yourself. Then the only choice which is left out is, well, you must be the source of happiness and security. That's all only. And well, and then you realize also, if there is a punya man you have come across through through a book or through a satsanga, etc., in a by Vedantic teacher, then you will come across that yes, that the happiness and security and peace which you are seeking in your life is nothing but yourself. Then, well, definitely that becomes a goal of your life. That's called tatparayana, basically. That the freedom which you want, the independence you want, well, in terms of gaining all these things, that is my own nature, actually. And so the self alone is this moksha, self alone is independent, self alone is limitless. And therefore, well, I as a limited being, I am searching for limitlessness, fullness, wholeness. That wholeness cannot be other than me, naturally. And if it is other than me, it is going to be limited because it doesn't include me, right? If this is a source of fullness or happiness, well, but it is other than me. And if it does not include me, it does not include this, it does not include something else. So itself is very limited. How can it give a wholeness, a fullness? And therefore, if this is a goal of my life, wholeness, fullness, or the security, etc., well, it should be independent. It cannot be dependent on an external factor. And then it should be, I must be the source of this. And well, so this is the first step, that this, understanding this, well, do not think this moksha, etc., is going to be in forest, or it is some kind of an event happening in the life, etc., or it's an event happening after death also. No, it's our moksha is basically the capacity to be comfortable, even when the situations are not in my favor, because it's totally dependent on me. I am a moksha sarupa, etc. This is all a homework that person does. And therefore, the advantage will be is that, well, I'm not afraid of the future. I am ready for any type of future. I know that the future cannot influence my fullness. I mean, this is what a little homework he does from the satsanga, that yes, I'm seeking all these things, but basically, I am the sort, and then and the seeking of these things cannot come from ultimately cannot be fulfilled basically from the world. And Bhagavan said very beautiful example in chapter 2 for this, that apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti na kamakami. So this ocean does not depend upon the rivers for its fullness. And if the rivers are going to basically claim that I am adding water to you, what will the ocean do? Suppose the river, this Ganga and Kaveri and all this Purna and whatever, it goes to the ocean. They all go to the ocean basically and tell that we are supplying water to you. What will ocean do? It would not even answer, because the ocean knows that the river is not supplying water to the ocean. On the other hand, it's the other way around actually. Ocean water only alone evaporates with the sun, and again then pours down as a rain, and the rainy water accumulated well becomes the river. So just as the ocean is full, whether the river flow or not, or whatever be the quality of river, well, Ganga also merges, and some river which is polluted, that also may be merging into the ocean. But basically, ocean remains ocean, full and complete. Same way here, Bhagavan gave that example, and he compared that ocean with the self, that I am the full self, like ocean. Experiences are like the rivers, and some rivers are not polluted, very, very pure, and some rivers are polluted. Same way, well, I also undergo varieties of the experiences. Some are wonderful experiences, some are very terrible experiences. They are like rivers. Well, they all come here to the self, but basically, or the experiences do not come at all. Like certain rivers don't merge into the ocean. Before merging into ocean itself, they get dry up, etc. Well, anything, there will not be a iota of a change in the fullness of the ocean. Same way I am like this ocean. Very beautiful example has been given in that Sthita Prajna section of the of the second chapter. So once I clearly understand the glory of this freedom, glory of this the fullness which I am seeking is nothing but the self. The security which I am seeking is nothing but the self. And the peace which I am seeking is nothing but the self. Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Sa Vigneha. And therefore, I am of the nature of silence, and thereby I am seeking silence from the external sources. And it may bring a silence for some time, but then not for a long time. Whereas my nature is of the nature of silence, means I am always of the nature of silence. Well, I and the silence cannot be separated because it's my own nature. Anyway, and so if you understand everything, that the self is the goal of life, then the effort in my life will be not to change the world in order to make it favorable so that I will feel secure, I will feel happy, I will feel peaceful. No, my struggle to change world I will drop it. My struggle to change the situations, to change the people, I will drop, and my aim will be what now? Struggle to change myself. I want to bring a change in myself. Means what? A cognitive change. I should know myself. What is the reality of myself? Why am I taking myself as a limited being? Why am I taking myself as an ego? What is the reason? And if I'm taking myself as an ego, limited being, then, well, if that is a reality, well, I will be comfortable with. But I am not comfortable with a limitation centered on the self. And therefore, perhaps that may not be my nature. And also, well, my experience from satsanga, he hears all these things. That my own experience is, well, definitely I do become free from the limitation in a moment of joy, and also in the state of deep sleep state, I do become free from all this sense of limitation. Therefore, limitation, if it is my nature, well, I could never be away from that. I will be always have a sense of limitation in all the three periods of time, in all the three states of experiences. But I do become free from that. And therefore, perhaps this limitation may not be my nature. Perhaps it has come due to some error, etc. Well, and then, so, well, I myself will become the full self, the real self becomes the goal of life. And so, perhaps the ignorance may be the cause, etc. And so, then I become a spiritual seeker. And I myself become, the Atma becomes a goal of life. Spirit becomes, they say spirit becomes a goal of life. Then I become a spiritual seeker. So I seek spirit, Atma, as though. Until then, I am only a mental groper, groping, doing something without knowing for what I am doing, actually. I am only a materialistic groper, not knowing what to do for peace of mind, not to do what to gain happiness, not knowing what to do for gaining happiness, not knowing what to do for gaining security. And definitely now I realize, yeah, that self-transformation in terms of knowing myself is required. I myself is a goal, and I'm on the sought, and I myself is a seeker. So this is called Tatparayana. I have gotten directions in life, not an extrovertedness. Now it's called introvertedness. Paranchikhani Vyatra Swayambhu Parang Pashyati Nachantaratman, etc. etc. So far I remain extrovert, dependent on for all these three things: PHS, peace, happiness, and security. There will not be a solution in that too. So, well, definitely I myself am the source of that. So then the person gains a direction of the life. That's the first stage. First stage in ultimately to gain the wisdom, self-knowledge, and moksha, etc. This is the first stage. Now, definitely, he has to find a source of knowledge, basically. So, well, some teacher who, well, a traditional teacher, definitely, who handles the words of the Shastra and creates a context and using the same words which are used in a transaction and giving you the knowledge of the self, which is beyond transaction. Therefore, the words have to be wielded properly. The context have to be created in which the popular meaning, the immediate meaning of the well, that words have to be dropped, and it will lead you for giving you the knowledge of ultimately the self. The words can give, well, with implied meaning, etc. So, a traditional teacher, well, definitely is required. And so now the person who knows for sure that a direction in my life to gain this, to gain the highest goal, that limitlessness, the self, well, ultimately I have to know myself. And well, in second step, well, definitely he comes to the scripture along with the teacher, well, traditional teacher. And so the scriptures, and there are many scriptures, well, but especially Vedanta, whose purport is self-knowledge. And so definitely, and traditional teacher of Vedanta, well, he comes and so he gains jnana. So here it says tad buddhaya. Now you can take the first word. So tatparayana, from which was the last word in the first line, has to be taken first in order for a chronological order, in order to arrive at all the steps. So tatparayana is the first step to ascertain that yes, I should know myself. For that, well, he goes to a teacher who teaches Vedanta, etc. And therefore, what is the second step? Now, so tad buddhi. Buddhi means jnana, and tad means that Atma or Brahman. So definitely, so he goes, he gains Atma jnana, let's say. He gains Atma jnana. It involves definitely Shravanam, Mananam, etc. And and so Shravanam, Mananam itself gives you clear knowledge. That's enough. And in between, of course, some stages are there, which Bhagavan, of course, misses here because he's giving Krishna wants to give a broad outline, and therefore he skips that Karma Yoga, etc., or Sadhan Chatushti Sampatti, etc., and he just talking about Jnana Yoga only. And so first step is Tatparayana, getting a direction in life towards knowing the self. Second stage is definitely Jnana Yoga, You have to gain knowledge, pursuing knowledge, and that's called Shravanam and Mananam. That's called Tad Buddhaya. So now he has gained. So these are all the, the Visheshanas used for the person who ultimately becomes a wise. For them only, these are all different words used as adjectives. So we'll see that when we see the Bhashyam, we'll see these are all samasa, basically Bahuri samasa, indicating about the person, qualifying the person here. So Tad Buddhaya means the people who know. One who has done Shravanam and Mananam with the traditional teacher of Vedanta is called Tad Buddhaya. So that is the second step. One who has gained clear knowledge. Yes, that I am Brahman. Then says third step now, Tadatmanaha. Even after knowing that I am the reality, I am limitless, etc., I am Brahman, etc., I continue to identify with ego, that limited self, right? So because I have fallen in love with my individuality. So I, as a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, etc., well, I have got so much identification with my body, mind, sense complex that I do not want to give it up. This thing we will look at a little differently when we see Bhashyam. But let's look like this. Let us look at from a different point. So as though I really love an individuality. And so I do not want to give it up. Even though I know now, in my head, it is very clear that I am Brahman. Shravanam and Mananam, both I have done with the teacher. And for a long time, definitely. A systematic study, etc. Well, but then, basically, that individuality I like so much that I don't want to give it up. And they give an example of a slum people. Like the slum people, even if government provides them a better houses, you know what they do? Well, they take those houses and then they give those houses for rent, and they come back to the same slum. So and there are bonded laborers also in India, and they are also rescued by the government, and they are put in some rescue homes, etc. And within a month or few weeks, they give up that and rescue home and go back to the same old place where they again became a bonded laborers and undergo a lot of suffering. So we were, and then the other example the Acharya gives is that we were under the British rule, under the control of British for a few hundred years, and almost 200 years. And when some of the freedom fighters wanted freedom, many of the Indians at that time, resisted. And they said, well, why at all, or why you are doing all this freedom fighting, etc. Let there be a British rule. Even now also some of the, now of course most of the generation are gone, but before few years I do remember very old person, basically they whenever you talk to them and who were there in the British rule also and had undergone experiences, they say, well, British rule was much better than now. What is the situation in India? So when I'm controlled by someone, after some time, that slavery itself I'm get addicted to. And similarly, I continue to be a slave, dependent of ego. As an ego, I am a limited being, and therefore I depend for security, happiness, and peace, etc. Dependent on external situation. I'm slave for varieties of the objects, but somehow as though I like that slavery. Anyway, so in this stage, tadatmana means what kind of a sadhana it is. I have to train myself ultimately to switch my identification from the lower individuality, that is father I, wife I, etc., husband I, or I'm engineer, I am this, etc., all this is nothing but an ego identifying with the body, mind, sense complex. If you identify with the intellect, you will say, well, I'm an engineer, or I'm a doctor, whatever. Or you identify with the mind, basically you will say, I'm a compassionate this or whatever. And with the physical body, you identify and you say, well, I'm having this much height at this, and this is my look, etc., So this is what I have an introduction to. And now I know I am Brahman. Well, I have exposed myself to the teaching. That is called Tad Buddhi. So Tad Buddhi, he knows, he has Atma Jnana. Clarity also is there. So So when we, well, this mananam basically removes this notion, samshaya. If you do Shravanam, I will talk in Bhashyam also. But anyway, Shravanam basically will give you both the types of knowledge. Shravanam can give you Paroksha Jnanam and give you Aparoksha Jnanam also. Anyway, but so you have a Shravanam and then maybe doubt may be there. Shravanam means you arrive at the purport of the Shastra. What is the purport of the Shastra? What is the central theme of the Shastra? Well, Shastra says, Upanishad says that you are Brahman, Tattvamasi. You are Brahman. Okay, that's true. But then, but the other philosopher says, no, you cannot be Brahman. Brahman is Paramatma. You cannot be Paramatma. How can you be Paramatma? You are a limited being. He is a limitless. And you are like this, you are created and he is a creator. How can you say? You are creature. You are creature. And he is a creator. Varieties of this. You are very, you know even very little of even a given thing, small thing. And he is a Sarvagnya, omniscient, omnipotent. And what about your power? You do not have even a power of breaking a small papad. so how can they equate? And then we feel that, yeah, they are closer to my understanding about myself. Those philosophers, rather than Vedanta, they are much closer to my philosophy. About my opinion about myself, they are much closer to me. Yeah, that's true that I'm a limited being. And if I'm a limitless, how come I don't know it? Etc. etc. And well, nobody says, whoever is born in this creation, no human being tells that I am a limitless. And limitless need not be born. That's a different criteria. But I'm saying, and therefore everybody is ignorant, dies ignorant, again born ignorant, again dies as ignorant about himself or herself. What is this? Is it possible? And other philosophers say, don't go with them. Don't go with these Vedantins. So you have to remove that doubt, basically. And so you remove. You definitely ask the teacher, and you definitely remove it also. So Shravanam, Mananam, both combined together gives you clear knowledge. That is called Tat Buddhi. Tat Paranam is a goal. Self is a goal. And then you gain Jnana. Jnana becomes a goal. You are the self. You are limitless. But I don't know. Okay. But ignorance. Okay. Then I should gain knowledge. So, and then when you gain knowledge, Tat Buddhi. But then individuality I like so much. Then again. So definitely. So this ego, we go to, all this varieties of the introduction, identifying with the body, mind, sense complex. I am this, I am that, I am human being, I'm father, mother, this, that, everything. And in fact, we go to one more extent in saying I'm devotee also. I'm a great devotee. I've given so much, to the temple of the, and so. And some people have another ego. I'm a sannyasi. Well, that is a still bigger ego. All of you grihasthas basically should do namaskaram to me. Of all the 4 ashramas, sannyasa ashrama is supposed to be the greatest. It's a culmination of all ashramas. And I have renounced everything. So everybody should do a namaskara to me, basically. Shastra says you have renounced everything, but you have not renounced the notion that you are a renouncer. That's ego. I am a renouncer. Well, I told you, right, in the first session itself, I am is your reality. What you add later is not your reality. What you add in that fill in the blank, I am, fill in the blank, that is ego. That's due to identification. So I am a renouncer itself is a very big ego. Whatever big, small, it is limited. And therefore, Shastra says, well, that itself has to be given up, that I am a renouncer. Tyaja dharmam adharmancha ubhe satyanrute tyaja. Ubhe satyanrute tyaktva yena tyajasi. Tyaja. So after renouncing everything, well, this abhimana, that I am a great renouncer, that abhimana also has to be given up. Yena tyajasi, by which you have given up, by which you have renounced everything, that itself has to be renounced. Means as a renouncer, I renounce everything. That renouncership, that ego also has to be given up. In light of knowledge, it cannot be given up. The giver, then, well, I have given up. I am the one who has given up. That remains. That renouncer remains. So this is in light of knowledge that, well, the ego is just a false entity. It is not a real entity at all. If it is an entity, well, that's the reality of me, then there is no need of resolution of ego, etc. But so far as ego is there, all our problems are there. We know. As a father, I have a problem. As a mother, I have a problem. As a human being, I have a problem. As an engineer, I have a problem. When I identify with the body, mind, sense complex, I have a general sense of a limitation also. That itself is a discomforting. And apart from it, well, definitely as a father, I have some certain issues with a son or daughter, whatever. As a husband, I have some issues with the wife. Definitely relating to all, you have all the issues are there. And so this is this ego itself is which is really not there. We have seen in the first session. Itself becomes a issue. That's how they say, basically, So this ego, but somehow I know, somehow I like that individuality. So I keep on, even after I know that I'm not ego and limited entity, I'm Brahman. In reality, I'm limitless, etc. And this ego is due to identification with body, mind, sense complex, which is not the self. And therefore, I should not claim. I should not claim it, which is non-self. I should not claim because I am the self. But then I keep on identifying it and repeat. So we are discussing a third, tadatmana. What is that? So this is the ego. It is very, very powerful. And therefore, even after you have know clearly that you are Brahman, which is limitless and free from, distinct from the ego, etc. Well, to assimilate as though takes time. It takes a long time. Knowing about myself as a reality that I am Brahman is easy, but dropping this abhiman with the body, mind, sense complex, with the ego, etc., well, is not easy. And so Bhagavan says, tadatmana. Tadatmana means you identify with yourself, with the Brahman, which is your real nature. So in traditional stages of, the sadhanam, basically, this sannyasa ashrama is only to facilitate this disidentification. What is the advantage? Because ultimately, jnanam can be gained by grihastha also. There are grihastha jnanis. In fact, there are more. In Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Vamsha Brahmana is there. There is a Vamsha Brahmanam, in which there is a lineage. Vamsha means a lineage of teacher students. And in that lineage, most of them are grihasthas. Most of them are grihasthas. And therefore, sannyasi is here and there. And Bhagavan himself praises grihasthashrama very well and talks about grihastha jnanis also, brahmarpanam, brahmahavi, etc., etc. What a vision of the self a grihastha jnani has while performing an yajna. That's particular shloka, brahmarpanam, etc. So that fire is Brahman, and then performer, myself is Brahman, and this ladle is Brahman, and what I offer, that offering also is Brahman, payasam or whatever is Brahman. And therefore, is a grihastha. Sannyasi cannot perform that. So, grihastha jnanis are there, sannyasis are there, both are there. And grihastha jnanis are more also. Then the question arises, then why a person takes a sannyasa? Why a person takes a sannyasa? For what? Maybe escape, some kind of an escape? No. It is just to facilitate the process of disidentification. So it's only basically when a person takes a sannyasa, he cuts off, all the relationship, because every relationship basically invokes a corresponding ego, basically. When I relate to a wife, basically, definitely I should take myself as a husband. If I don't identify with the husbandhood, basically, I cannot relate to a wife. And so basically in all relationship, basically the ego is always invoked. Some ego will be invoked. When I relate to a children, well, definitely I take myself to be father, mother, whatever. And so otherwise the relationship will not be possible. So every relationship invokes ego. And therefore in sannyasa ashrama, basically, giving up relationship formally and pursue the knowledge, which will facilitate to come out from the identifying with the ego, because relationships are given up. And therefore, it is easy to disidentify with the ego. Taking ego as a self, you can definitely, easily, you can disown that. And therefore, Yeah, but there also there is problem is there. No, it's not the sannyasi ego, suppose, or guru ego, or a shishya ego, whatever. They are there, but well, they can be dropped with the pursuit of knowledge. But you become at least free from taking yourself as just ego in the waking state. In waking state, when you transact as a grihastha, basically you transact with a lot of people, relate to a lot of people, and you, because you are active, so you relate to many people also. Then ego is all the time invoked. Comparatively in a sannyasa ashrama, well, definitely, if relating to a student or relating to a teacher or etc., etc., well, it's very comparatively less. So you can definitely, that's a facility. Jnanam can be gained in either way, in both the ways. Basically, for jnanam, you require karma yoga and jnana yoga. You require a certain attitude behind an action and also pursue the knowledge. So you should perform a certain activity with a certain attitude, Ishwararpan Buddhi, etc. And also you should have a Shravana Mananam, etc. Both the means are required. And that both the means either you do as a grasta or you do in a sannyasa. Even sannyasis can do a certain karma yoga also. I mean, serving the teacher, and while you are staying in some gurukulam or something, then taking care of a gurukulam, etc. In terms of cleaning this, the whatever. So definitely, but or else bhashya paranam, etc. also is there. They have also nitya karmas are there, and that pranam upasana is there for sannyasi. So, but karma yoga is less, but it is there. So both the means are required basically for any person. So karma yoga is also essential to gain a certain chitta shuddhi, purity, and also you require jnanam also. So whether you do this, whether you follow this both the disciplines, karma yoga and jnana yoga, either in grihastha or in sannyasa, but it is required. And therefore, jnanam can be gained by both. And there are jnanis of sannyasis as well as grihastha. But only the difference is this: the facility is there to disidentify with this a limited being, a jiva, individual, ego, and thereby you have a facility to disidentify with body mind sense complex. And that is why na tata, na mata, na guru, naiva, na shishya, etc., etc. So, well, I'm not a father, and I'm not a mother, and I'm not a guru, and I'm not a shishya, etc. So nothing is there. That's a standpoint from all these are from the standpoint of body. Father cannot be without this physical identification with the body. Mother cannot be there without identifying with the body, right? Guru cannot be there without identifying with the body. And well, if you say teacher, well, definitely you may identify with your knowledge, that is buddhi. So unless you identify with this body mind sense complex, well, this ego cannot be there. And therefore, that's how they always give this kind of verses, which will assist you to become free from the ego. And so, so tadatmana. But what is this then? How to do that? That's called nididhyasana. So you may play a certain role as a grihastha. You may play a certain role, well, but you simultaneously spare some time, and allot time for yourself, and in which you really, basically, let's say you play again what has been recorded in Shravanam and Mananam, right? When you have listened to the teacher for a number of years, and you know what you are now, that I am Nitya Shuddha Buddha Mukta Svabhava, etc., etc. You have heard, and you know for sure now that yes, I am Nitya. I'm the one who is not changing. What is changing? Because in all the 3 periods of time, what is changing is this ego. This, the waker goes away and this dreamer comes. Dreamer goes away and deep sleeper comes. Deep sleeper goes away, then again waker comes. They keep on changing. But the I, the consciousness, on which even the ego is sustained. Waker is a conscious entity. Here, deep sleeper is a conscious entity. And even this dreamer is a conscious entity. The I, the consciousness, sustains all the ego. But I remain, basically, I am the one who is not negated in any state. Egos are negated. Therefore, it is false. So this is how you think. But for thinking, basically, and doing this kind of meditation on meditator, basically, you are required to sit down. That's called, I'm going to talk about it. Two types of nididhyasanams are there. Well, samadhi abhyasa nididhyasanam and brahma abhyasa nididhyasanam. Bhagavan has talked about brahma abhyasa nididhyasanam as well as samadhi abhyasa nididhyasanam in chapter 6. And brahma abhyasa nididhyasanam also he has talked about. We'll see that. What I'm saying is, while going to Bhashya, we'll see. What I'm saying is, so ultimately to disidentify from this ego, individuality, and well, you have to sit. I mean, you have to do this meditation of self, meditation on meditator called nididhyasana. And well, and then you get up from that, and definitely, well, you have to you have to transact with the world. Then according that is a role of you. You will understand. Like actor is actor. Well, unless he takes up he signs a particular film, and then well, the script is given to him that this is your role and this is the way you have to. I mean, you have to use you have to speak that language, and you have to wear that dress and whatever. So role playing, same way we have. I know that I'm actor, and in varieties of the situation, well, definitely I will take a role playing, and I have also script. I also, as a father, I have certain script. As a mother, I have certain script. Everything. So nididhyasanam helps you to realize that you are basically actor. Actor is this kind. You are Brahman. Sometimes a role playing such that the actor takes a role as himself or herself. Then we have to teach him properly that you are really not a beggar. You are really someone who is very rich, and your identity is different. So anyway, tadatmana means that atma, that becomes your atma. That means this limitless self becomes your atma. You no more take ego as atma, ego as a self. Anyway, and then the next and final stage is tannishtaha. So once a person deliberately practices this, Bhashyakara in fact has written many shlokas of which will help you for nididhyasana. And one of that is, basically, our Atma Shatakam. Manobuddhya hankara chittani naham, nacha shrotra jife, nacha ghrana netre, nacha vyoma bhumir, na tejo na vayuhu, chidananda rupa shivoham, name dvesha ragau, name lobha moho, mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhavaha, na dharmo na chartho na kamo na mokshaha, chidananda rupa shivoham, etc. So basically, all this for disidentifying with the body mind sense complex, and I'm just a Chidananda. Well, I am the one who is just consciousness, Ananda, fullness, etc. Shivoham. I am the one which is auspiciousness. I am the moksha sarupa. So Shivam is a Mangalam is a moksha. I am a moksha sarupa. I am ever free. Nothing touches me, and all this basically no limitation can touch me. All these varieties of the, Ashuddhi and Anityatvam and mortality and all this, they belong to non-self. And the self which is free from all this, etc. So every time when I repeat, well, the body is an equipment. I mean, it's an incidental equipment I see. They are all instruments basically. And these sense organs are incidental instruments. Even the mind, intellect are only also instruments to do a transaction with the world. What happens is any instrument becomes the part of the self if it is near and if I constantly use it. That's how it is happening. Like whenever you think about me, I'm sure you won't think it without specs. I'm telling you. So because the specs is an instrument for me to see, when I put it here, it remains very near to me, and then it becomes a part of me. It becomes a part of me, as if I am born with the specs. And as I have kidneys, the same way as if I have specs. No, actually, that's an instrument. And it is really an object. Instrument is an object, right? It's not a subject. And it is true also. When suppose if I remove it and I clean like this, is it object of knowledge or not? Right? When I do a cleaning of this, etc., then it is an object of knowledge. But when I put it here, it becomes subject. So this is how it is. It is just an instrument. It helps me to see little clearly because of a certain problem in the eye, etc. So this is how it is. The body, mind, sense complex are so near. In fact, they are non-separate from the self, consciousness. And they are given to me for transacting in the world. And every instrument has its own use. Mind has its own use, and the senses have their own use. This is for seeing, this is for hearing, and etc. And so they are all instruments. Instrument is not the person. Instruments is an instrument. Basically, it's an object. With the help of that, I transact. But this is how it is. So basically, this is a way I think to disidentify as a non-self. So I am the consciousness behind the instruments. When I repeatedly practice like this, then it becomes spontaneous and natural. I will take them as an instrument. But till then, well, the instruments are taken as a self. And an entity arises, which is really not an entity, which is not, in fact, a reality. But we experience it, and that is called ego. That I sense arises. That's due to self-ignorance. It's a Brahma. Anything which is born of ignorance is error. So anyway, and this we can see even in the different examples that, when a person gets married from bachelorhood to householderhood, for some days he does not remember initially whether he's a bachelor or he's a householder. After repeated practicing, means after a certain period of time, now even in dream he will dream it as a householder, right? And therefore, so even though external change takes place, the internal change takes time. And so we are these sannyasis, they are given new name. This has happened to me also, and we ourselves forget our new name, because as a brahmachari also we will be given a new name, as a sannyasi also will be given a new name. But even if a new name comes that day, whenever the sannyasa is given, that day our teacher gives a new name after diksha, etc. So then, but the new name is not owned up by you. Externally, it is now over. That it is declared by a teacher in a group of sannyasis, where it is declared that this Swami will be called with such and such name. That Puja Swami is to do like that. But for you, it has not internalized yet. And so again, somebody calls with the old name. People also call with the old name, because they also don't know what is your new name. And so they call with the old name, and then you feel, you look at that direction, in the direction of the calling. And if somebody calls with a new name, it generally, immediately you may not pay attention. So this is how it is. So external change happens quickly, but internal transformation takes time. And so since a beginningless time, you imagine, since beginningless time, I am taking myself as an individual. Any sharira, of course, human being we are talking about right now, but any body, which I enter into, de sambandha is a janma, basically. Birth is nothing but relating to, entering into the body, relating to the body. And when I relate, I will not relate it as an instrument, even though it is an instrument. I will take it as a self. And therefore, this ajnanam, self-ignorance, is the beginningless. And therefore, ego, which is born of self-ignorance, out of non-discrimination between self and non-self, that is also beginningless. And therefore, internal transformation takes time. Even though externally, you have gained knowledge. In your intellect, it is very clear that I'm not ego, I'm Brahman, etc. Everything is very clear, but it takes time. So, and when the transformation is complete, it's called Tannishtha. Tat means that Atma, that Brahman. Nishtha means basically, you have abided into that. You are no more ignorant about yourself. You don't take yourself to be now a limited entity, ego, etc. So these are the 4 stages. I'll just repeat. First is a value of discovering that, yes, the sort is me alone. I'm seeking in my life myself. Then that's a parayana, tat parayana. Then the next stage is, gaining, knowledge, and, through the teacher, etc. So, it's a discovery of myself. Okay. Then the third stage is start identifying with that self, the real self, real I, and gradually disidentifying with the ego, etc. And the fourth stage is Tannishtha, ultimately you are no more ignorant about yourself. You don't take yourself to be as a limited entity. Even though in a transaction you take it also, but that's a deliberate one. Like a actor takes a deliberate role. He knows his reality is different. He is a very rich person, but he may accept a role of a beggar, which is really contrary also. So same way, I am limitless, but contrary to that is this ego, limited self. I may take, but that's due to, well, that depends upon the transaction. But I am sure that no, this is just a role. So this is called Tannishtha, in which Brahmanistha we call sometime, well, in which I am aware of myself. So Tatparayanaha, Tadbuddhayaha, Tadatmanaha, Tannishtha. And so then this is, so you have now gained a nishtha, right? That you are Brahman. Means you are moksha. So moksha is gain. Vimuktasya vimuchyate. Moksha is gain means what? It's not other than yourself. The self is moksha. Self is free. Free from any notion which is of a limited self. Free from ego. Free from any kind of conclusions wrong, which are wrong. Because they are all born of self-ignorance. Therefore, I am limitless self, which is self-revealing, which is full, which is wholeness, etc. Which is just a consciousness, nothing else, and which is ever existent, right? What is existent is this consciousness. That's how it is. And so, Jnana Nirdhuta Kalmashaha. So ultimately, by going through these stages and gaining the wisdom, they are free from all impurities. Kalmasha. Kalmasha means impurity. And Nirdhutaha means washed off. So washed up by what? Washed up by these 4 stages, ultimately, and gaining nishtha, well, washed off this self-ignorance and born of self-ignorance. All the conclusions about myself, all the impurities are gone. What are the various varieties of the impurities? In Shastra, they call 3. First is the self-ignorance. The ignorance itself of myself is impurity, ajnana. And they call sometimes avarana. And then, well, I study the scriptures, etc. And then it creates a further doubt about myself, right? The Shastra says that you are Brahman, you are limitless. And, well, the other person says regarding Brahman that, well, it is Paramatma, it cannot be yourself. And you also have a doubt. How can be I limitless? It doesn't look like. Shastra says it's okay. Shastra's purport is okay. I don't question Shastra, but I claim how to understand that and how to give an answer to the other philosopher who says that, well, you cannot be Paramatma. So samshaya, doubt. So Shravanam removes, basically gives you the jnana. Ajnanam goes. Well, that I am Brahman, etc. has been told by the Shastra. You know. But then you have so many doubts regarding this Brahman. Brahman cannot be me, etc. I can't be Brahman like that. So samshaya is there. It's another impurity. It goes by mananam. Mananam removes the doubts. And well, once ignorance is gone, doubt also is gone. It's a clarity. But still habitual, these vasanas are there. Dehabhiman is there. Somehow you like identifying with the body, mind, sense complex. As I told you, internal transformation takes time. Since this is beginningless, you are telling yourself as an ego. Therefore, it won't go. It's a habit. Anything which is a habit takes time to go. If it is an old habit, it may take long more time. If it is a new habit, very fresh, recently formed, then you may be able to drop it also. So this is a third impurity called viparya, dehabhimana, vasana, etc. So ajnana, samshaya, and viparya, well, they habitual body identification, all these 3 are called kalmashaha. And all this kalmashaha nirdhutaha. Nirdhutaha means wiped out by this wisdom, which has been described in these 4 stages. This is called Jivan Mukti. Now he says, I'm Brahman, means I'm free. No notion. I'm freedom from the effect of time. I'm freedom in terms of space. I'm freedom in terms of object-wise. Also, I'm free. If I'm limited, if I tell I'm a human being, well, I'm limited. By declaring I'm a human being, I declare that I am not anybody else. Means I'm limited. And therefore, I have a physical limitation. If you say I'm a human being, identifying with body, you have a physical limitation, emotional limitation, intellectual limitation, limitations galore. So now, I'm all pervading Brahman, which sustains even time, space, and everything, which sustains all the objects. They are mithya, non-separate from me, but I am the truth of everything. Therefore, this is Jivan Mukti. I am free. So such people enjoy Jivan Mukti. That Jivan Mukti has been described in the first line. And in Bhagavan says in second line, Gachanti apunaravrittim. Apunaravrittim api gachanti. Such people, these wise people, apunaravrittim gachanti. They attain Videha Mukti. Punaravritti, well, basically, avritti means coming to this loka, basically. Punaha avritti, coming back to this loka, means taking birth again. So, apunaravritti means will not be born again. So, means Videha Mukti. So, second line talks about Videha Mukti also. So, what is how to gain wisdom? That has been told. And, well, if you gain wisdom while living itself, you are free, Jivan Mukti. And in second line, Videha Mukti also has been told that he is no more born again. Actually, that is the jnanam that I was never born, right? I was never born, not that I will not be born again. Ego bonds, right? Jiva bonds, basically is born. I'm sorry. Jiva is born. But then basically, Brahman is what? Basically, I'm free from birth and death. But that belongs to body, mind, sense complex. And if I identify with that, I will say, I have a birth, I have a death. I'm ever free from this, from the relationship with the body, mind, sense complex. They are mithya. Satyam cannot have any relationship with the mithya. A waker cannot have any relationship. Waker boy cannot have any relationship with the dream girl for marriage. Nothing. So, Satya mithya, well, definitely, there is no relationship possible. Relationship is possible between the two same order of reality. I mean, two objects which are of the same order of reality. And therefore, well, this ego is if you don't inquire into the nature of ego, that will remain a big entity. If you inquire, that just vanishes. Anyway, so then the phalam in terms of Jivan Mukti has been told, and apunaravrittim, basically, if become free, also he will not have to born again. What is the purpose? Human life is served. Human life, and the purpose of human life is, from limitations to limitlessness. That's a goal. He has attained it. There is no why Bhagavan has to give him another human body. No need. For the purpose for which it was given, well, it has served. So, apunaravrittim gachanti. Wise people definitely are not born again. That is from the onlooker stand. We'll discuss that. There are two types of Videha Muktis. We'll discuss while we're discussing Bhashyam. I will definitely discuss. Om Purnamita Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.